Oh my God, you guys, Ari Chambers is here. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, reminding you that you can follow us on Twitter at Locked On WBB. You can make us your first listen every day. We cover women's basketball every single weekday here at Locked On Women's Basketball. And of course, make sure you're following what we're all doing over at The nexthoops.com. Over 100 reported pieces every single month covering the game that we all love. And Ari, I'm going to open with what I saw and what I thought of. I saw Vin Scully pass away. He's a figure who meant a great deal for a long time in the world of baseball. And I read a piece that said that baseball had no greater friend than Vin Scully. And immediately I thought of you, because women's basketball has no greater friend than Ari Chambers. So Ari, from HighlightHer to a lot of other things, including what I really want to talk to you about, which is your new basketball from Wilson. The women's basketball community owes you such a debt of gratitude. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you do. Let's just start there.
Well, let's just start with the beginning, because who gave me the first opportunity? It's Howard, duh. And so let's not act like any of this would be without your help and you opening the door for me. A lot of people don't know. Well, I mean, they should know. I mention it often, but you're the one who walked me through the lay of the land. I remember telling people my dreams, and they're like, nobody's going to take you seriously because you're a cheerleader. And so I was like, I have to write about this game. And so you gave me my first writing about sports opportunities. So I'm thankful for you for setting this foundation. Then you were like, hey, hop on camera. And I was able to do that many years ago in the All-Star game. And so I am really, really thinking that this is full circle, and it feels like home.
Wow. This is always home to you. I am convinced, and I've told you this many times, if it hadn't been me, it would have been somebody. You were going to knock on every door. Your stardom was a matter of when, not if. So I love to see it. And I guess this is kind of where we want to start. Let's just talk about it. Like, there's a Wilson basketball that you designed. It is coming out. It's going to be in stores. It is, and I love this, $96.19. That seems like a lot for a basketball until you take like one look at the basketball and you're just like, oh my God, this has to be something that I have. But here's the bigger thing for me, right? You represent the growth of women's basketball. You represent the growth of women's sports. We'll get into this. Like, you're my friend who is able to do anything all the time. I see you on social. You're on water skis. You're learning about doing everything, and are always just like fearlessly charging into it. But Wilson kind of recognized that, I feel like, by picking you to collaborate. So just take me through like what you think it means that a company like Wilson recognizes who you are and where you are in this space right now.
Well, first of all, the price of the ball is really significant, because I believe October of '96 is when they signed the WNBA from David Stern's thoughts to on paper. And so shout out to him and Val Ackerman, may his soul rest in peace. But that was the beginning of the WNBA, and the 19th Amendment allowed women to vote. And so, I mean, we still had a long way for Black women, Black and brown women, but it's there's significance within that price too. And I'm looking at my set, and this is so funny because I didn't realize how much Wilson I had on my set. They can't see it, but it really is a brand that's in perfect alignment with me. From day one, they felt like family, and they didn't have to do that, right? I had no previous connections to them, and then just knowing that they grew to be such a family because they saw the work on the grassroots level that I was doing, and they wanted to invest in it. And so when we go back to the price of the ball, a $96 ball, it's going into the representation of the WNBA, because if we want more equity, we want more visibility towards women's sports, it's really imperative that we make that investment. And so that's what I would say to people who are asking about the price of the ball. But as far as being a part of the Wilson family, it's always felt like that. The tagline is bonded by ball, and it really does do that. I've been able to travel the country with the team, and they really paid mind. I know we'll get into the details of the ball, but they really paid mind to what really is representative of me, is representative of the fan base of the WNBA, is representative of the players, is representative of the pride that I have in my hometown, representative of the state of North Carolina with basketball in general, because we are a basketball state. Even though I've been in New York for 10 years, Raleigh is still my heart. And so just growing up there, knowing that I came from a K-Yow legacy, even though I ended up Kathy Bucky's legacy, I was a cheerleader, but it's very much representative of the strong women that came out of North Carolina. It's representative of women and non-binary athletes in that space, and just making sure that we open up space for everybody to feel like the WNBA in particular is their family, is their home.
Ari loves North Carolina the way listeners know I love New Jersey. So there's absolutely, you will never stop representing.
I'm a New Jersey girl now, Howard. So I kind of love it here too.
We're happy to have you. We are. But, you talked about something, and I think this goes back to a thing that I have long observed, which is that when you come into a space, number one, the reaction you get, and just the happiness, the joy that you bring in that space. For you to be able to do this at the grassroots level, just take me through what that feels like to see these young women who are coming up to you, who are interacting with you at these grassroots events, and the types of conversations that you have.
I think that there is genuine curiosity on how, or what I do, first of all, and how I do it. So I think that that's what the appeal is, because I haven't had to change myself much during my ascension. I was a fan of the game. I had friends that played in the league, and what I was able to do was just meet them where they're at and help amplify their stories. It's in my nature, because I am a cheerleader. Even though I didn't cheer for people growing up, I was a competitive cheerleader, but that's a different story for a different day. But I have always been a megaphone for people. I've always been able to help uplift and empower and amplify people's messaging, because I've always been loud, the only child, the only grandchild. So just being able to do that, and people recognizing it through a lens where I'm not trying to push an agenda. I don't have anything in my arsenal to do other than push the women's game forward. I think that it's really endearing to people, and it creates relatability between players and the community that follows them. And so just bridging that gap, I guess I'm the bridge as well as the megaphone. And so the accessibility that not only the players have, but that I have to people, I think that's what really draws them in. I don't feel like anybody's on a different field or any different level. Like, we're all at the same event. We can all talk to one another. Nothing is cut off in that way. So it's just, I've always been a person who proves the people who love what I love right, and not the haters wrong. So what I do, I sprinkle my passion on people, and hopefully people are receptive of that. And I think that's really refreshing in a world that can be so dark. So that's what I want to do. I want to amplify, empower, and uplift, and bring together people, and make this women's basketball community and women's sports community in general feel seen. And that's what it is.
It's what you do, and I'm a little emotional about it, to be honest.
Aww.
But it's
girl dad, because you're a girl dad.
I went back because it amazes me that you have created in HighlightHer something that you talked about being a bridge, and that's how you do it. You don't pretend to be something you're not. Everyone understands the authenticity that you bring to it, and you fearlessly charge into this. And we both have heard through the years about people talking about what women's sports cannot be, and the limitations, and the word niche comes up all the time. You could go to Instagram and go to HighlightHer on Instagram, and that you are north of 200,000 followers. I saw you were customarily understated about yourself, as you so often are, even as you are an amplification for everyone else. But what was that number like for you when you saw it?
I don't think that I ever processed the magnitude of the movement. And that's something that I have to work on with myself. But it shows that there's a demand for it. We have HighlightHer. We have, Just Women's Sports, W Slam. We have Overtime Women's Basketball. We have Locked On Women's Basketball and all the other independent outlets that are working tirelessly to cover women's sports. And obviously, if they can all exist, there's an appetite for women's sports. And it's not a niche. A gender can't be a niche. A subset of sport can't be a niche. It's literally sports. And so when I see over 200,000 people following HighlightHer on Instagram, it's just a good indication that women's sports popularity is at this point so undeniable that I say this all the time, the cost of inaction is greater than the risk. And so it's not a matter of how do we do it? Like Leisure Clarendon says it best. They're always like, close your eyes and, make the same budget and make that happen. Like just give the same resources to women's sports as men's sports. And I think that's where, if you see equal investment, you'll see women's sports shoot up there because there's a demand for it now. There's an appetite for it, and it's not just a niche thing. You see it, especially within the soccer community. You see so many sold out stadiums. You see it we saw the pictures from Seattle. People care about women's sports as a whole. And so, you have companies like Wilson aligning with those people who have really, really been pioneering for it. And so they can have the authentic investment in the game too.
I just love that Leisure, even not in the league this year, is everywhere. And
everywhere. And I live for Lay. So
my policy, and my writers know this at the Next, is the Leisure Clarendon pitch is always a yes.
Yes.
And I was so delighted. They're in this video that I got about a league of their own, and they were playing baseball. I was asking them like, "Oh, are you a professional ball player now?" And they were like, well, my defense is ahead of my offense, but it's very close. So I'm excited about a league of their own for sure. But I want to get into some of the specifics about the weeks ahead because you have a lot coming, and we have a lot coming in our space, obviously, to talk about in women's basketball. First, I want to talk about betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check your betting needs. Betonline.net, when they say all your betting needs in the ad copy, I highlight it because they have WNBA odds. They have women's college basketball odds. I'm not a betting person, but I know that having the equality, having it like close your eyes and it's equal matters. And so it means a lot that they have Major League Baseball, yes, but they have WNBA as well. It's how we get equality in this space at every sector. So head to Bet Online today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And where the playoffs are starting, we still don't really know. As we sit here on Thursday, August 11th, we are a few days left in the regular season. There are a four-way tie for the final two spots. There is massive chaos. I think we might be getting some bonus Sylvia fouls, which wasn't so certain about a week ago. I know, or not.
I mean, they went from 11 to 7 overnight. So we just.
I know, but now, well, I mean, it's an easy task. All they have to do is beat the Seattle Storm and the Connecticut Sun, and then, they're in. No difficulty doing that. I mean, what are you like? How do you keep focused on all of that when there's so much going on here? And we've got effectively 10 teams. I mean, 11, if we include LA, is only a game back, still alive here in that final 4 days.
I love the down to the wire thing. It's funny because when I first started covering sports, I loved sheer dominance. But now I'm like, ooh, there's 6 through 11 that's up for grabs. Now it's 7 through 11, just like up for grabs. And it just creates more excitement around the game. You're going to see the games being more packed out. You're going to see people really, fighting for their home team to win. You're going to see people who don't necessarily pay attention to regular season, pay attention to the end of regular season because they want to know who's going to be in the playoffs. You see players, unfortunately, getting hurt. So who's going to step up? I love to see how Marina Mabry's been stepping up for Dallas in the absence of Enrique, and just knowing like how teams can be disciplined to close out the season is the best part for me. And it's kind of it's funny because it's taking me back to last year when literally all Washington had to do was win one game, and then they just didn't. Mm-hmm. So like New York was in it, but I'm wondering if there's going to be like a down to the last day situation for who's going to be in those top 8 spots. So those who don't know, the top 8 of 12 make it to the playoffs, no matter East or West, it doesn't matter. It's just top 8 teams. And so just knowing that and knowing that it's so just like last year with like who's going to make it is really cool. And I'm going to be tuned in, Howard. I'm going to be tuned in, and just, I have no preference at this point because, I thought I was a Sparks fan, but I'm a Candace girl. So like I go where Candace goes. And so Chicago secured that. But no, as a journalist, I'm like, yes. Taking my fandom out, I'm like, yes, this is parity. This is showing how competitive this league is. And there was a glimpse of Indiana at the beginning of the season. I was like, oh, what are they going to do? Unfortunately, they didn't make playoffs this year, but like, I'm excited for their future. They're going to be older, and hopefully it will have a turning around. But focusing on the teams that are going to make it into playoffs, I'm like, who's going to make it? There's so many mistakes.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And somebody asked me that. They were like, "Who's the team you're most looking forward to?" And I mentioned, I was like, "Man, even the Fever. I love watching Fever games." And so, to see what Queen Egbo has done, and Alyssa Smith, who's on my all-rookie team ballot for sure.
Oh, 100%.
It is fascinating to see. But I do, and you'll forgive me for kind of deconstructing your answer for a moment, but like it was like very much vintage you, right? Your WNBA Weekly segment where you're trying to point to an unheralded player, and you mentioned Marina Mabry, the fact that you're providing a bridge for people to come in. You talked about that 8 of 12 teams make the playoffs. This is you guys, this is what she does. Everything goes, and it's just incredible. Like I said, I can be objective about the league. I cannot be objective about Ari Chambers. So it's important that we make sure that people understand that. So I'm just curious from like finding new sports perspective, and you are constantly entering those spaces. Are you getting the same kind of reception, response? Are you seeing people gravitating to the stories that you're telling in the same way? And how do you figure it out? So there's such a fire hose of women's sports events going on. How do you figure out what is an Ari Chambers story to cover?
I think that any women's sports story is an Ari Chambers story to cover. It's been interesting because I have been in a safety net. I have been privileged enough to grow up with a lot of the WNBA players. I'm talking about like since we were 14. And so I've been able to get stories out of them because just they've known me for almost 2 decades now, right? But at the same time, what I love about covering all women's sports is the push to challenge me to rise up to what I'm asking of people, which is investing in women's sports. So when I tried to enter soccer a few years ago and learning that the clock goes up instead of down, like the most basic levels of the sport, they welcomed me with open arms because they knew it was the intention behind it, the willingness and desire to cover them. And so I have a really good relationship with the NWSL.
Yeah.
And it's strangely enough, my first soccer job was the U.S. Women's National Team Parade, which is wild. And so I have a really good relationship with Ashlyn Harris now, Natalie Krieger, which is like unheralded. They're actually the first soccer duo, first soccer interview I had on We Are Jayla at the time. So now it's HighlightHer, obviously. Yes. But they came to the office, it kicked it, and I'm just so gracious. And now I feel like I see Ashlyn every other day, and they live in Jersey. So it's really cool. But it's a push for me to learn these other sports. But again, if we're going to try to make this mainstream, we have to make all women's sports mainstream. So that means I'm out in Huntington Beach covering the U.S. Open surfing. That means that I'm out at AU with softball and making content around that. I think that as long as you're willing to listen, it makes you a better journalist, and it makes the stories better. So like I'm always willing to listen. And so when people feel like they're being heard, they're going to tell more. And so you see that reflected in diversity in softball series that I have with AU, which actually won in Webby. So I'm really proud of that. You see it with I I played volleyball, so AU volleyball was super fun for me. I was actually able to practice with them and vlog through it because your girl's nice at volleyball. But that happened, and then you see off top with the WNBA that I do and the NWSL, just trying to navigate that. I am always open and willing to tell anybody's story who wants to be told. I don't have the restrictions or the red tape, because who's going to check me with that, to only go for the huge names. The huge names are great. And I do love talking to the huge names of the sports, because I have a different angle with that. But why not that player who's excellent at what they do that only has 3,000 followers instead of 300,000? But it's always going to be space and opportunity to tell whoever's story wants to tell me.
I remember you at the parade. And again, this I think speaks to like try and stop you. No one can get in your way. And I remember like covering the parade, and I'm there, and suddenly I look up, and it was like the scene at a Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And it was like, oh my God, Ari's on the parade float. Getting the story. This is what you do.
Who let me on that float? We don't know, but I just walked and nobody stopped me. Like, sorry, security, but like nobody stopped me. So that's what I would tell young journalists out there. Like, be a little relentless in your pursuit. Like, apologize later. Don't ask for permission. Just do it and just be like, oops, my bad. So yeah, I was on a float. I had the time of my life in that.
That was amazing. Listen, I need everybody to understand, if you're anywhere in the neighborhood of Wilson, Columbus Circle, 10 Columbus Circle in New York, on August 17th, it's from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern time, Ari's going to have the release of this basketball. When you see it, you're just going to freak out. Like, I don't know how else to describe it to you. Like, this is not paid promotion. You just got to see it. It's so cool. And that my friend is doing this. My friend is doing all of this. Gives me so much joy. So, Ari, thank you so much. But before we let you go, I do want to let our listeners know, first of all, we'll be back with you tomorrow. The great Missy Heidrich's going to be interviewing Jen Hatfield on those Washington Mystics. She's, of course, terrific on that beat. You can also go to thenexthoops.com, of course, and read our most recent Laser Clarendon piece. There are so many and many to come. And once you have made us your first listen, once you have consumed every bit of content at HighlightHer, and you have fully immersed yourself in the women's basketball world, there's something you ought to know. There's a league that I just heard about. I want to make sure I did this right. It's called the National Basketball Association, and apparently it's a men's basketball league. I'm not sure. Ari, are you familiar? Have you heard about it at all?
The MNBA, Howard? I heard of it.
Yeah, I think as I understand it, it's a decent way to kill time between WNBA seasons, is the way in which it was described to me. So you can get your latest news and rumors on the NBA in just 30 minutes every day with Locked on NBA after us, after everything that Ari Chambers does. And you just try and get through everything Ari Chambers does in a day. I can't even imagine. Ari, congratulations on this, on every one of your successes. I can't wait for the millions and millions of successes in the years ahead.
Thank you, Howard. And just to let the viewers know, or the listeners know, this ball is from my heart. It's very classic. I try to make it as gender neutral as possible while still being representative of women and non-binary athletes. And it's just space to define exactly who you are. There's a "we are" on it, and it leaves it open-ended. So I hope whenever you all see the ball and consume it, and hopefully go out in Columbus Circle with me on the 17th, that you feel the passion that is this basketball.
I want to read also the text that you have on there, which I love. This basketball is dedicated to the future of storytelling and celebrating the game-changing experiences of women and non-binary athletes everywhere. I mean, if I could come up with a greater summation of the work you're doing, I can't imagine. So
thank you. And because of North Carolina, there's a blown-up map of Raleigh right here and right here.
Of course. I love it. Ari Chambers, my whole heart. I'll be talking to you.
Thanks, Howard.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back with you tomorrow. I'm Howard Megdal. Have a wonderful day.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.